Hello, and welcome back to the stream, the channel. My name is Angela, front-end developer in St. Paul, Minnesota. Tonight is, I guess, a bonus Friday night live stream. I had a couple articles about front-end development that I've been saving up that I thought would be just an interesting topic, something interesting to talk about. So glad to have you here. Hopefully, you can join us in the chat. Let us know what you think. Um, yeah, and I hope you're doing well. It's been a couple of weeks. I took last weekend off from streaming. I've been streaming pretty regularly every Saturday and Sunday afternoon. Oh, yay! Nano Akia is here. Welcome. Happy to have you here. I know that it is, I think you said, I think you're overseas, you're in the EU, and it is the early morning hours for you. Thank you so much for staying up and joining me. I'm happy to have you. Um, I took last weekend off. I was a little under the weather, and I'm really glad that I did that because it gave me a chance to sort of recharge my batteries and start feeling better. I don't know if you're like, if you can if you're like me, you can pretty much put your finger on any bug or virus that you get based on where you've been. Here's the thing, I work from home and I am just home a lot. I don't go out a lot, not like in my 20s and 30s when I was out all the time doing stuff. So I'm pretty much blaming last weekend's virus on the Walmart in Eagan, Minnesota. I'm looking at you, Walmart. I can absolutely associate any bug or virus with where I've been and what I've been doing, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So I'm glad I took last weekend off and rested. I am super excited to be back and chatting with people. And we have a couple other people in the chat here. Monique, so happy to have you. I think, Monique, that you told me you didn't think you were going to be able to make it tonight. So unless that was somebody else, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad to see you, obviously. Supreme Overlord, good morning from End. Love the stream heading. So here's the thing, is I purposely did something a little bit provocative, right, to attract people. I think you guys know that I love front end, that I basically feel like I was put on this earth to do front end development. I love HTML and CSS. But I found these two articles and I thought they were really interesting. So the first article here is called Web Development Was Designed by Satan. And what could be more provocative a title than that, right? So these articles aren't very long, but I do want to go ahead and read them. And yeah, so the author of this article, I looked him up on LinkedIn. This is a very, very accomplished software and data engineer. There isn't really anything. I don't want to give people the impression that I'm picking on these authors. I'm absolutely not. There might be things that I disagree with, but reasonable people can disagree. So clearly this is somebody who doesn't love front-end development or web development. And I really mostly just love hearing other people's perspectives, good or bad, right? So, oh, and everybody is saying hello. I just love it. Yes, Monique, I'm glad that you are here as well. I'm glad everybody's here. Okay, so let's get started. I don't want to laugh at another developer's pain, but you can clearly see that there are strong feelings here. So, web development is often seen as a chaotic field by many in the software engineering community. This sentiment was aptly captured by a user who famously went on a ranting rampage in his post, "Web development is effing stupid." And I did read that post on Reddit. I got a chuckle out of that. So this Redditor is quoted as saying, "I have never seen such poorly written languages as JavaScript and TypeScript in my life," he wrote in his Reddit post. He further added that the dependency management with NPM and Yarn JavaScript package managers is a nightmare, and frameworks like React, Redux and Next.js are constantly changing for no reason, making the entire process unnecessarily complicated. Now, I actually will agree with that. I use Yarn at work, and I obviously use NPM, and the dependency management, I will agree with that. That if you find yourself in an ecosystem where you have a set of files that you're really not, you can get caught in an ecosystem that is very difficult to update if you're in an organization where things just aren't changing. It's not like if you are working on personal projects or even doing client work. Sometimes in big organizations, enterprise level websites and apps, it can be very difficult to break out of an ecosystem, especially if the original build was done by a developer who just didn't have the experience to understand how to future proof their build, if that makes sense. I find myself in a similar situation, so I really understand that sentiment. So despite the strong language, his viewpoint resonates with many developers who find web development frustrating. One user commented, "I hate how most of the software engineering is web development." Another added, "I started off learning video games and desktop apps, but by the time I finished college, I realized most of software engineering is web apps, which I despise." So what's interesting about this paragraph is that I feel like I've met so many full stack and back end developers who, first of all, appreciate a good front end developer because we do all the things that they hate doing, which is CSS mostly, right? But if you look around, literally everything is CSS. So it's interesting to me to hear how an observation like this was such a negative observation, because everything that you interact with because of CSS, because it's front end. So why the hate? Many developers feel that web development is plagued by poor management and constant changes. There's always some new framework everyone thinks will be the holy grail, but it's just as bad as everything else, one user lamented. Another agreed, saying that no other area of software engineering releases as many updates and new frameworks as web apps, making it hard to keep up with. 100% agree with that statement. However, not everyone shares this negative view. Some see the challenges of web development as opportunities for interesting projects. There are so many interesting projects in web development. People think it's just building simple websites, but web apps can have so many interesting challenges and depth, a user noted. Another pointed out, web applications today are just the desktop applications of yesterday, thanks to advancements in computing power. Yeah, I could see that. And then there was an embedded post here from X. Why did web development have to become such a house of cards? I just want to fix a broken link and I can't without upgrading dependencies, but that process just breaks everything. All this for a portfolio site seems pretty stupid. Maybe that's my fault. And I agree with this statement also, which is why I specifically put the emphasis on my channel as HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript. Vanilla JavaScript especially because, for one, if you've watched me for any length of time, you know that my blind spot is JavaScript. It's the part that I struggle the most with, and I excel most at HTML and CSS. I have no issue using a framework. I mean, would you call Sass or less a framework? Maybe, I don't know. To me, it's like shorthand. But I could easily do Sass or vanilla CSS, no problem. HTML, I love. It's the backbone of everything. Um, I really struggle with front end frameworks. A, because my blind spot is JavaScript. It's the thing I struggle the most with. But B, because there are so many to learn, it can feel overwhelming. Which one should I do? I'm not really sure. Um, when you read job descriptions, if you're looking for a job, they list so many frameworks and so much experience, and it's just a toss up what any one organization could need you to know, which is why I specifically said I want this channel to be about vanilla JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, because I think if you don't understand core foundational concepts, it doesn't even make sense to me to deep dive into a framework. And so JS was written in less than 2 weeks and uses both prototypes and objects. It's never going to be a great language that we need. It's never going to be a great language. That's why we need React, Redux, Next, Vue, Angular, etc. I mean, I don't think I know enough about JavaScript to have made this type of observation, so I appreciate that you're pointing this out. I have to tell you though, I mean, it's not like I consider myself to be like an intermediate user of JavaScript. I think it's amazing. I mean, I have a software engineering degree. I learned Python, I learned Java, and I think JavaScript is amazing. I mean, think about everything that you can do on the front end with JavaScript. I mean, think about how JavaScript could be. So maybe this is what you mean. My next point, maybe this is what you mean, which is that JavaScript started as DOM manipulation, and now to me it's like a full stack backend programming language. And that's because we have Node, right? So that's why Angular, Vue, React, all of those things exist. I think though the author's point here is that there's so much to learn, so many new things popping up, that it can be overwhelming, especially if you're a new developer. And if you are looking for a job, even if you're an experienced developer looking for a job, like I've been in my current position for 7 years, if I were to go out and look for a job now, to find another organization that that lists the tech stack that I've been using for the last 7 years, it's going to be really unusual, right? So if I were to do that, well, what would I need to know? What would I need to know? I already know Vue. I have to do a deeper dive into Angular. Do I need to learn React? What are the other things out there that I need to learn that I haven't learned because I haven't needed to learn them? So I understand this feeling of being overwhelmed. And nearly all we have in JavaScript now comes from jQuery and other frameworks. Good old jQuery. That was what I originally learned in WordPress world. So I'm gonna stick with the fact that I think that JavaScript is pretty awesome. And I consider myself somebody who's been exposed to a lot of different things. I think it's extremely powerful. And I personally really love JavaScript. It's my goal for 2025 to just get so much better at it. But to me, it isn't that specifically JavaScript itself is too hard. To me, I see it as wanting to be better at object-oriented programming. And I think once you understand object-oriented programming in one language, it translates to most languages. So my trouble with Python, my trouble with Java, my trouble with JavaScript is that I'm still wrapping my head around what it means to be an object-oriented programmer. That's what I think. So, and Nanokia is saying that he loves back end and front end. I mean, I would say that I mostly love front end, but I also love backend, and JavaScript gives us the ability to do both with one programming language. So you have all the DOM manipulation and accessibility and styling and everything that's great about building user interfaces with JavaScript. And then with Node, you have the powerful way to build those backends. But you don't even need Node to do a backend, right? You can still do those fetch requests on the front end with vanilla JavaScript, and you don't even need Node. So it's very powerful. Okay, well, let's keep going. There's so much more. There's so much more to talk about. So in web development, frameworks often become obsolete within a few years, replaced by newer technologies. Although I have to say the big three seem to have stuck around, right? Vue, Angular, and React. Replaced by newer technologies, developers must learn these new frameworks, update existing code, and hope for smooth transitions. And now there are people who say that TypeScript is going to replace JavaScript, which brings back the same conversation about the changing landscape of web development. Yeah, but I don't think TypeScript is that far off from JavaScript, at least not what I've seen from TypeScript. Too much to deal with. Web developers and software development agencies face even greater challenges. While some agencies stick to a specific technology stack, most take on any web-related projects they can find because they need to make money. They're in the business to make money. Others believe that the constant updates and new frameworks are a necessary part of the evolution of technology. Web development has nothing to do with websites. It has everything to do with web applications. The reason web dev jobs are so common is because 99.9% of software is delivered through a browser or mobile app now, a user explained. Despite the criticism, some developers find web development to be intuitive and refreshing, and no one needs to switch to every latest web framework either. If you have to, it's not that bad if your foundation is solid. Yes. See what I'm saying? So let's go back up here. Let's examine this paragraph. Others believe that the constant updates and new frameworks are a necessary part of the evolution of technology. Web development has nothing to do with websites. I disagree with that statement. It has everything to do with web applications. The reason web dev jobs are so common is because 99.9% of software is delivered through a browser or mobile app now. Okay, so this statement I do agree with. 99.9% of software is delivered through a browser or a mobile app. I don't agree that web development has nothing to do with websites. If you've ever worked for an organization who takes their enterprise level website seriously, especially as higher education does right now, because let me tell you, we are entering an era where there are fewer people graduating from high school, and higher education is highly competitive, where it used to be that it was competitive for the students. Now it's competitive for the universities. And that's because fewer people are graduating from high school because there are fewer people in high school. There are shifts in population, right? It ebbs and it flows. Higher education needs new students more than students need higher education. There's also this landscape changing I think people are starting to come to the conclusion that you don't need a 4-year degree necessarily, right? You can be a self-taught learner. You can learn online. You can have experience. You don't need a college degree anymore. So my university, and I know other universities, take their enterprise level websites very, very seriously as marketing tools. And I will also argue that most web developers will work in a marketing environment, whether that's an agency. If you work for an organization supporting the organization's websites, you will be part of the marketing effort of the organization, building landing pages, helping with lead generation, which is like forms and data, and connecting to the CRM, whatever that may be. For us, it's Salesforce. And Monique is saying a good understanding of the basic foundations is key. Once you understand the basics, you can expand your knowledge in various frameworks. I totally 100% agree. Totally agree. And I think they're saying that most stacks are made to make browser applications rather than websites. Yeah. I mean, so yes, you're absolutely right. And so maybe I'm taking this statement too literally. Um, Sorry, runny nose. 1 second. Yeah, I might be taking this statement too literally. I just feel like and so I feel like every place I've ever been hired has been I've been in environments that are very marketing focused, not web app focused. So yeah, I mean, I can only go on my own experience, right? I've worked in agencies, I've been a freelancer, a contractor, and I've been, part of this university higher education ecosystem for the last 7 years. And everything is about marketing. Everything is about lead generation. Everything is about bringing in new business. So, anyways, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Saying that you like my input. I mean, this is the point, right? This is the point, is to talk to other people and find out about other people's experiences. So this says to me that this person's experience is that they have not been marketing focused in their career like I have been, right? So, um, okay, let's keep going. So web development Web development is stupid, and the internet is held together by duct tape. JavaScript was designed by Satan. We should tear the internet down and rebuild it so it's actually meant to run the kinds of dynamic applications most people want it to. I'm having a good day at work. Well, at least this person is being honest about their feelings, right? Like I said, reasonable people can disagree. Web development may be seen by some as a necessary evil. The hyperbole, I love it. But it remains an integral part of the software engineering landscape. Computers are literally designed based on the principle of abstraction. Even if you're coding in binary, you're still abstracting away a ton of stuff, said a user in the discussion. Web development, with all its layers and complexities, is just another step in the ongoing evolution of technology. The hate for web development is not new. A simple search on Google, X, Quora, Reddit, or any community platform throws thousands complaining about the constantly changing paradigm of web development for more than a decade. Regardless, according to the Stack Overflow Developer Survey of 2024, JavaScript has remained the most popular programming language in the past decade. This can be attributed to the fact that JavaScript has been used almost everywhere, not because it is loved by everyone. All right. I shouldn't be laughing at people's pain, but I do love the hyperbolic language. I'm here for it. I mean, when I first started learning, I mean, I'm a completely self-taught developer. And listen, it was hard. I mean, I had a full year where I gave up because I was like, this is too hard. It doesn't make sense. Like, what am I doing? So I stopped. That's when I went to graduate school the first time, and the degree that I got first was an MS in technical communication from a really great school here in the Twin Cities called Metropolitan State University. Uh, all hail King JavaScript. Hey, I think JavaScript is what makes the universe go round. I mean, I really love JavaScript. So anyways, part of that program, I mean, when I entered that program, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a content creator. That's because I was podcasting at the time, and I loved blogging, and I thought I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to be a content creator, like I'm going to be part of this world, but like web development is just way too hard. Well, then I took a class where I was required as part of the class. It was a document design class. We had to make an online portfolio using a WordPress.com site. And I had not done anything with WordPress. I had heard of it, but I had not done anything with it. And that was sort of like my entry back into web development was through WordPress. And I ended up really falling in love with it again. And through that program, that's when I was required to take the beginning web design class where I was introduced to that Murrock's book, HTML and CSS, which ended up being just a complete game changer. And it was like, there was no looking back after that. Once HTML and CSS clicked and a little bit of jQuery and a lot of WordPress, I was absolutely hooked. I knew I was making this career change, and I've never looked back, and I obviously don't regret this decision because I love what I do. I mean, I think I was put on this earth to be a web developer, and I love HTML and CSS. I think anybody who watches this channel will know that that's obvious. So now this article from CSS Tricks is from 2018, and I don't read the CSS Tricks blog as often as I used to, but I remember when this article came out and I read it, and I always remembered that I had read this article because it resonated with me a lot. So when I came across Web Development Was Designed by Satan a couple of months ago, I went back and found this. And kudos to Chris Coyer on CSS Tricks. His website is so well built. It was a breeze to find this article. So let's get into this. Front-end development is not a problem to be solved. HTML and CSS are often seen as a burden. This is a feeling I've noticed from engineers and designers I've worked with in the past, and it's a sentiment that's a lot more transparent with the broader web community at large. You can hear it in Medium posts and on indie blogs, whether a conversation about CSS, web performance, or design tools. The sentiment is that front-end development is a problem to be solved. If we just have the right tools and frameworks, then we might never have to write another line of HTML or CSS ever again. And oh boy, what a dream that would be, right? Well, no, actually, I certainly don't think that front-end development is a problem at all. What's behind this feeling? Well, designers want tools that let them draw pictures and export a batch of HTML and CSS files like Dreamweaver promised back in the day. On the other hand, engineers don't want to sweat accessibility, web performance, or focus states, among many, many other things. There's simply too many edge cases, too many devices, and too many browsers to worry about. The work is just too much. Consequently, I empathize with these feelings as a designer developer myself, but I can't help but get a little upset when I read about someone's relationship with Bootstrap or design systems, frameworks, or CSS in JS solutions, and even design tools like Sketch or Figma. It appears that we treat front-end development as a burden or something we want to void altogether by abstracting it with layers of tools. We should see front-end development as a unique skill set that is critical to the success of any project. I believe that's why frameworks and tools like Bootstrap are so popular. And again, this is an article from 2018. I don't think Bootstrap is nearly as popular as it once was, but I know it's still widely used. Not necessarily because they're a collection of helpful components, but a global solution that corrects an inherent issue. And when I begin to see Bootstrap in multiple resumes for front-end applications, I immediately assume that we're going to be at odds with our approaches to design and development. Yes. Bootstrap isn't a skill, though. Front-end development is. And this isn't just me being a curmudgeon, I hope. I genuinely want tools that help us make better decisions, that help us build accessible, faster, and more beautiful websites in a way that pushes the web forward. That said, I believe the communities built up around these tools encourage designing and developing in a way that's ignorant of front end skills and standards. Yes, I totally agree with that. What's the point in learning about vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript if they wind up becoming transpiled by other tools and languages? Don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong with Bootstrap or CSS in JS or CSS modules or fancy design tools. But building our careers around the limitations of these tools is a minor tragedy. Front-end development is complex because design is complex. Transpiling our spoken language into HTML and CSS requires vim and nuance and always will. That's not going to be resolved by a tool, but by diligent work over a long period of time. I reckon HTML and CSS deserve better than to be processed, compiled, and spat out into the browser, whether that's through some build process, app export, or gigantic framework library of stuff that we half understand. HTML and CSS are two languages that deserve our care and attention to detail. Writing them is a skill. I know I'm standing on a metaphorical soapbox here, and perhaps I'm being a tad melodramatic, but front-end development is not a problem to be solved. It's a cornerstone of the web, and it's not going away anytime soon. This article just speaks to me, and the number one reason it speaks to me is that I'm just going to tell you right now, I have never built a site with Bootstrap. Never. Because I wanted to know and understand HTML and CSS. I mean, I took that year off when I thought things were just too hard. And that predated Bootstrap, to be clear. So that was like 2011. Then I came back at the end of 2011 and I dove headfirst into WordPress, and I had the book and I started learning HTML and CSS. And by 2012, 2013, when Twitter Bootstrap came on the scene, I was like feeling pretty confident with my HTML and CSS, and I didn't see the point. In fact, when did Twitter Bootstrap? Twitter Bootstrap. Launch. Yeah, Twitter Bootstrap was released on August 19th, 2011 as an open source project. I remember hearing about Bootstrap. I mean, it must have been 2012, 2013, right in there. And by the time I heard about it, I feel like I took a lynda.com class on how to use Bootstrap because it didn't make sense to me. And I thought, why do I need to do this if I understand HTML and CSS? So I just never dove into it. A couple agency jobs I got specifically because I didn't rely on Bootstrap. They wanted somebody who could build a website from scratch and not need to rely on a framework. And from the very beginning of my career, I was able to do that. I see the value in Bootstrap for people who are maybe full stack developers, or even, front end. I feel like a front end developer now is somebody who may not even be somebody who's good at building UIs. So I could see the value in somebody using Bootstrap if you are more on that Node full stack backend side of JavaScript and not necessarily somebody who builds user interfaces. I actually kind of think there are two types of front end developers, right? There's the folks who really excel at building UIs and the folks who really excel at like the Node side of stuff. Oh, and Monique is saying there's a new edition of that Murrock's book that was just released. I should check that out. A friend told me about a VS Code extension I think you might like, CSS Flexbox cheat sheet. You no longer need to leave VS Code to see how to use Flex. Are you referring to the number of times that I have to look at the CSS Tricks website Flexbox page? I think I am single-handedly responsible for his analytics on that page. No need to read these out just in case I go to sleep before the end of the stream. You're too late. I loved Linda before LinkedIn bought it. Yeah. Linda was how I learned so many things in those early days. I started using Linda in 2009. Let's see here. I used Bootstrap, but was more focused on making certain that I knew the foundation first. Frameworks will come and go, foundation does not. That's a very good point. Oh, yes, and to be clear, I am not. I don't want to shame anybody for using a framework. This is just my own experience. Not everybody loves building UIs the way I love building UIs. And if you were a developer coming up anytime in the last 5 years, I would fully expect that you were probably taught Foundation or Bootstrap, and that could be an excellent entry. I mean, I can't think of a faster way to build something and to see your work in the browser, right? I mean, think of what my experience might have been like if Bootstrap had existed in 2009, 2010 when I was starting. I mean, I basically gave up for a year because it was so hard. What if Bootstrap had existed? And just because you started learning Bootstrap doesn't mean that you wouldn't eventually go on to build UIs from scratch. It all depends on what your level of interest is, um, whether you have any desire at all to be good at building UIs. Clearly, that's the direction that I went with my career. I wanted to be great at building UIs, and I don't regret that at all. I'm now at a point where I'm very comfortable with that process, and I really want to step up my game on the back end side, on the full stack side, with JavaScript, with Node, things like that. So, um, yeah, these are just such great conversations. Um, let's go to, I really do want to go to Reddit. Let's go to Reddit. We should read. Oh, see, and this is in the CS majors. This is in the CS majors Reddit. And so I have to say, so I just graduated from a software engineering program. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. I just graduated from a software engineering program this year in May. I work for a university. I work for the University of St. Thomas here in St. Paul, Minnesota. One of my benefits is free tuition. I had no intention of going back and getting another master's degree, but for free, it just seemed absolutely insane to pass that up. So for 5 long years, I slogged my way through that program. One of the most challenging higher education experiences of my life. I am here to tell you 100% the software engineering program at the University of St. Thomas is not mostly web development. There was one web development class, also very challenging. That was where I was introduced to Angular. But it is heavy, heavy, heavy Java, Python backend. It is very, very backend focused, database management. It's a good program. I wished it had been more web development focused because I think that I think that that was like the missing. I felt like that program missed a huge opportunity to introduce more people to web development. So maybe that's the point of this author's comment, that software engineering is so much web development and they just didn't get exposed to it that much. I don't know. So, yeah, I mean, my teacher who chose Angular, that's an excellent question. I wondered the same thing. Um, I think I don't know why he chose Angular. I like Angular. I don't not like Angular. Um, I was grateful that I got exposed to it, having not knowing React and only having used Vue. I appreciated getting exposed to it. I think as a framework, it's a good framework. Depends on how complex your app is, right? I think with any framework, once you get into once your complexity requirements go up, then you get introduced to the complexity of the framework, and your experience is your experience. So I hate how this is ignored so often in this sub. Okay, this is what happened to me. I started off learning video games, desktop apps. Then by the time I finished college, realized that most of software engineering is web apps, and I hate web apps with a passion. Like the original poster said, everything is so poorly written and managed. I mean, a lot of that has to do with the developer who wrote the code. So I don't think that necessarily is a reflection of the programming language. And there's always some new framework everybody thinks will be the holy grail, and it's always just as bad as everything else out there, but now all the applications want us to know it because it's the new popular thing. He's kind of right about that. She is right about that. No other areas of software engineering that I have personally seen have as many updates and frameworks released as often as web apps, and that is absolutely true. And Junior Garcia is asking, did you struggle with imposter syndrome? Every day of my life for the last 11 years, I have struggled with imposter syndrome. So that is a big thumbs up. Yes, I struggle with imposter syndrome all the time. As much as I love front end, as much as I love building user interfaces, I always think to myself, ooh, what are people gonna think? Do I look like I know what I'm doing? Do people think I know what I'm doing? What do people think? So yeah, it's really tough. I think imposter syndrome is the real deal, and I am battling it all the time. So okay, this is a bit rude. I don't know, man. If you can't find a single good solution for your problems, it sounds like you might be the problem. I mean, attitude counts. The last thing web development needs is someone who thinks they can make it better and make another new framework. I do purely back-end and infrastructure, and I enjoy my job. Never hated computer science as much as I did when I had to do web dev. Literally no reason for me to be able to complete my 30-page distributed systems assignment in 3 hours, but take 6 hours to figure out how to test a React component with Jest. Whoever wrote this deserves to get shot, then drowned, then shot again, then thrown overboard on a cruise. Okay. TypeScript and JavaScript are fine. In a later comment, you mentioned it took you 6+ hours to test a React component in Jest. Jest is a layer on top of React, a layer on top of TypeScript, a layer on top of JavaScript. Okay. Well, we've all been to Reddit, so we know what these comments are like. Listen, I understand that sometimes it's just, it either is your thing or it isn't your thing. I obviously think it's interesting when I find out that people don't like front-end development because I love it. Do I think it's hard sometimes? Do I have days where I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing to myself? But I still think that I have the coolest job in the world. I wouldn't trade this for anything. I certainly don't still wish that I was a paralegal sitting in a law firm, like pissing my life away because I was not happy doing that work. The firm that I worked for, they were a great employer. They took care of their people, and I loved the attorneys that I worked with, but I was not happy in that role at all. I was not happy doing that type of work. And I absolutely love this. I think web development is the perfect blend of technology and creativity. And look at the broad spectrum of web development, where you could fall on that spectrum and what you could do. You could be on the just super creative side, building UIs and design, or you could be on the side where you're building the apps and implementing the mock-ups and things like that, and more back-end focused. I mean, I feel like it is such a spectrum that you could fall almost anywhere or find a place on almost anywhere on that spectrum to be happy, right? So, and I would think that probably most of us are here because we love the front end, the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. And I understand the sentiment, I really do, but I obviously don't agree. But hey, these developers, like I said, reasonable people can disagree. And both of the authors of these articles are both, from what I saw in LinkedIn, very accomplished engineers, accomplished, successful engineers. So I appreciate the perspectives. And I appreciate the perspective of people who continue to show up and hang out and join me in the chat and contribute to the conversation. And yeah, thank you so much for following along and having this conversation with me. I hope it wasn't. I hope that it wasn't. Well, I don't think it was too negative. I think, if anything, it was a bit funny because of the hyperbole. So we will be back this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, to continue working on the portfolio website. I have a few fun things planned. One thing, if you want to do it before tomorrow, is now I'm on a Mac, so I use something called MAMP for my local environment. I'm going to show you, speaking of front end, back end, I'm going to show you how I use PHP to do templating on a static website. And if you are running a server with the LAMP stack, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, it's my personal favorite little stack, server stack to run. You can do easy templating of any static HTML, CSS, JavaScript site with a little bit of PHP. But in order to do that, we can't use VS Code and Live Server. We have to use an actual environment. There's MAMP, there's WAMP, and there's XAMPP, which I think is XXAMP. So there's a solution for, let's see here, and then there's WAMP also. And I'm pretty sure that there's a Linux, because Monique, I think you're on Linux. Yes. So XAMPP also has a solution for Linux. And once you have a nice little, I'll show you how I run just the free version of MAMP. And we'll do a little PHP templating. We're also going to set up a, let's see here. We are also going to create an HTML form. And we are going to use something called Form Spree for our action. And I have additional changes that I want to make to the home page. So I have an update for this section, and I have one more section that I want to add. So I'm really looking forward to this weekend. I have lots of big plans. We'll see what we can actually get done in one weekend, but I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, thanks guys for joining me. I love having you here. I love the conversation, and I will see you all again tomorrow. Mwah. Have a great rest of your evening wherever you are, and we will talk again soon.